Here tonight, our main special report centres on Northern Ireland. Channel 4 News has uncovered startling new evidence that, contrary to official versions, the military action on Bloody Sunday did not involve just one regiment, but that a second must also be present. 13 unarmed Catholics were shot dead by British soldiers in January 1972, following a civil rights march in Londonderry. An official inquiry led by the then Lord Chief Justice, Lord Widgery, concluded that the shootings had all been carried out by the Parachute Regiment operating at ground level. Now, this programme has obtained tape recordings concealed for a quarter of a century, together with eyewitness accounts, which prove that a second unit was shooting from high on the city walls of Derry. In this extended report, Alex Thompson reports now on how the Widgery inquiry ignored crucial evidence. It explores the legacy which Bloody Sunday has bequeathed to modern-day Northern Ireland.
It seemed as though the barricade was engulfed from every direction by bullets.
From shot in the face. So I sort of believed that he was a target, he was picked out.
Nobody moved, and then when somebody moved, you heard a crack.
The first ball came out, and then it will be over to the family.
It's 25 years since British soldiers shot dead 13 unarmed civilians and injured 13 more in Londonderry on Sunday, January 4, 1972. Bloody Sunday. 18 minutes which ensured the downfall of the storm on Parliament, the end of the peaceful civil rights movement, and ensured the Provisional IRA dug in for 25 years of war, knowing that after this it would never lack for volunteers. For all this time, the official version's been that the 1st Battalion, the Parachute Regiment, did the killing on Bloody Sunday, nobody else.
Appearing to be dead, there are the 3 in that Saracen car. There are 2 men lying at the end of this block of flats. There's another man at least very close to being dead. There are 2 others up there.
The then Lord Chief Justice, Lord Widgery, held an inquiry limited solely to the paras. He concluded that all those killed and injured were unarmed. He also said the Parachute Regiment was not guilty of murder or unlawful killing. Don Mullins gathered together eyewitness accounts, a marcher on Bloody Sunday himself. He's found new evidence suggesting the central conclusions of the Widgery inquiry are flawed. They'll be published in a book next week. He says the time's come to reject Widgery and for an official apology.
So long as Lord Widgery's tribunal report stands, then his verdict does not allow any of us to rest. And really, if this is to be healed, and those families are allowed to continue with their lives in a normal way, then Widgery must be repudiated completely, and the innocence of everyone on Bloody Sunday must be declared openly.
Tonight, for the first time in 25 years, we're able to draw together 3 separate strands of evidence about Bloody Sunday. The eyewitness accounts of more than 500 people involved in the events, details of post-mortems carried out on those who died, and hitherto concealed military information. All this has either been suppressed or ignored, both by Lord Widgery's inquiry into the events 25 years ago, and by successive governments ever since. The evidence begins at 4:07 p.m. when the paras stormed from behind their barricades to arrest rioters in the nationalist Bogside. The official story is that the paratroopers and they alone shot unarmed civilians. They moved into Rossville Street, opening fire, shooting 108 rounds. Lord Widgery later described their actions as bordering on the reckless. But our evidence will show there were other secret forces, units high up near the old city walls, also firing into crowds in the Bogside. A different regiment, perhaps, whose actions have been covered up all these years. Ralph Daw, an Englishman, was among the civil rights demonstrators. Even after all this time, he remembers precisely taking cover along this walkway under fire from the city walls high above.
If anyone appeared here, then they would like taking pot shots. It wasn't automatic fire. It was single shots. As far as I'm concerned, it was from the walls. But we were down here and the clay was coming off the top of the bank and covering us here. That night I went home, I had to clean the soil out of my hair.
500 eyewitnesses wrote statements about Bloody Sunday. More than 45 of them explicitly described shooting from the walls. The Widgery inquiry made no reference to shooting from here, so the stories remained largely untold until tonight.
We work our way round to here, but we're looking up the walls. There's a outpost there. You hear the cracks, the rifles shoot again, so we had to sit.
All of us who were in that position crouched down behind that wall and had to crawl on our hands and knees until we reached the safety of St. Colum's Wells, where we wouldn't have been targeted, or couldn't have been targeted from the walls.
The Widgery inquiry rejected the 500 eyewitness statements by these men and hundreds more. Even his own civil servants expressed disquiet. This memo from Lord Widgery's secretary is dated March 1972. I said that if I'd been advising a minister, I would have strongly urged the desirability of taking evidence from at least a few of these potential witnesses, since it was clear that if this was not done, there would be heavy criticism. But Lord Widgery saw only 15 of the 500 witness reports and concluded they added nothing new, despite repeated references to shooting from the walls.
Lord Widgery, who was the most important legal mind in both England and in the United Kingdom at the time, was used by his government to cover up mass murder. And we're talking here about the very distinct possibility of an army sniper operating from the vicinity of the Derry walls, picking off three human beings who were participating in a civil rights march.
Those three men are Michael McDade, John Young and William Nash, all of them teenagers, all unarmed, all shot dead within a few feet of each other. Tonight we have post-mortem evidence which proves none of these men could possibly have been shot by the parachute regiment on the streets. Dr. Raymond McLean, a former RAF medic who's worked with the parachute regiment, gave frontline emergency help to the dead and dying on Bloody Sunday and was present at all the post-mortems.
I was a doctor who had seen the first two people who were shot at the scene, and then I'd pronounced 4 people dead on the scene. And I wrote a detailed submission to the jury, and I was told that my evidence would not be required. Now, if that was a murder case in the streets, and I was a doctor and pronounced the person dead in the street, if I didn't want to go to the case, I'd have been subpoenaed and I'd been dragged into court. And I just couldn't believe it.
Here's the evidence. Case 1, Michael McDade. A high-velocity bullet entered his left cheek from the front. It exited below his right shoulder blade. The trajectory of the bullet is right to left, travelling downwards. Case 2, John Young. A high-velocity bullet entered his left eye. It exited below his left shoulder blade. The trajectory of the bullet is from the front, going back and downwards. Case 3, William Nash. A high-velocity bullet entered his upper chest and exited below his right-hand 12th rib. The trajectory of the bullet's from the front, travelling back and down.
It tells me that if they were upright or anywhere near upright at the time, they had to be shot from above to below at quite a good angle. I mean, the angle is 45 degrees in the three of them. It's amazingly similar. I don't think it's possible that they could have been shot from ground level.
And there's further evidence that the Paras couldn't have killed them. This photo shows Michael McDade, top left in his Sunday best, facing the barricade, that is, facing away from the Paras. Yet 5 or 6 paces later, he was shot through the face from the front. Equally, an eyewitness describes William Nash facing away from the Paras, as he too was shot from the front. We showed the post-mortem results to Hugh Thomas, a former army surgeon, ballistics expert, and now consultant surgeon at Prince Charles Hospital in Merthyr Tydfil. He quickly agreed the Paras at street level could not have killed these men.
Could they possibly have been hit by the soldiers at ground level?
No, they couldn't have.
this shot could only have come from a higher level. It would be almost impossible for those three men, in the few seconds available to them, to bend to exactly the same angle and face exactly the same way and be shot in exactly the same fashion. It would be extraordinary and almost unheard of. So I would say definitely not.
And we can now say definitely that there was at least one army sniper operating up close to the city walls on Bloody Sunday. The Public Record Office recently released a statement from a private in the Royal Anglian Regiment patrolling the walls. The soldier writes, "An army sniper was situated on my left about 15 yards away in the attic of a derelict house outside the city walls and returned 3 shots, but I did not see where his shots had gone and there was no return fire." The soldiers referring to this area of derelict houses up by the walls. They clearly overlooked the barricade in the foreground by which all 3 men were shot.
It's likely to be a marksman, exceptionally good marksman, firing toward, obviously, and in actual fact, firing quite fast at the 3 suspects who are clumped in the same area. You'd only need literally a fraction of a second to align the next individual and complete the job.
All this evidence was suppressed, rejected or ignored by Lord Widgery's inquiry. Eyewitness accounts, post-mortem details are all suggestive perhaps, but not conclusive. But tonight, for the first time, we can present absolute confirmation that soldiers other than the parachute regiment were operating in a completely different part of the city and firing on civilians. And this evidence comes from the very lips of the soldiers themselves as the events were unfolding 25 years ago.
GI4MJD, GI4MJD.
It comes from tape recordings made by this man, James Porter, a radio ham. He was born in Kent. His mother was an army officer, and he grew up to lecture in military engineering. In 1972, he was a neutral figure, monitoring radio traffic and liaising between the military and Derry's no-go areas of the Bogside and Cregan. He also ran a radio and TV shop on the site of this decorator's premises in William Street. On Bloody Sunday, police and army radio messages were recorded inside Mr. Porter's shop. The army radio unit was set up in front of the chemist's next door. James Porter is seen on the left here talking to soldiers on the day. For 25 years he's kept the tapes hidden. Tonight he's made them available exclusively to Channel 4 News.
I've come maybe to the end of my days, not just at my age. It would be terrible if this was never to come out. I mean, if you die, we have nothing. It should be that we should know, it's history now. We can't hurt anyone. It's just history. So the position is that this should now be made known, the actual truth of what happened.
James Porter's shop was in the thick of the action in William Street, and his tapes give a graphic sense of the unfolding violence, such as this sitrep, a situation report. 6'5" is Lieutenant Colonel Derek Wilford, the Paras commanding officer.
This is 6'5". The sitrep boils down to the fact that the 2 subunits moved in, got involved in a firefight. The shots appearing to have come from the area of Rossville Flats. The 2 subunits have now gone secure in that area. 2 civilians are lying wounded or dead, we're not sure yet, in the area of Chamberlain Street. Who shot them, we don't know.
So if you're being fired at, you return fire, and they know that perfectly well.
How many gunmen do you feel you've hit in the Bogside?
Well, I'm told from my quick sitrep, you must understand it's a very quick sitrep, that 3 gunmen were hit. We have not got the weapons, but this is the usual thing. We saw people come forward. I'm not going to say that I saw weapons taken away, because I don't know yet. I have not spoken to the men on the ground.
Lieutenant Colonel Walsh also sent messages informing officers of firing from the city walls.
0 and 90 Alpha and 76. This is 54 Alpha. We have just had 4 shots fired at our call sign Quebec 2-1 on the wall. 2 high-velocity rounds were returned. Over.
A short time later, another message came through. It again confirmed soldiers up near the walls firing and this time hitting a civilian.
This is 54 Alpha. Reference 2 shots returned at gunman near Bogside Inn. Man seemed to fall. At 16:20 hours, 1 further shot was fired from the area of the Bogside Inn towards our Oscar patrol on the wall. Over.
54, this is 0. A reference to your report of a man being seen to fall near the Bogside Inn. Why is
this man was fired at because he fired 4 shots at us. Over.
Hundreds of civilians were crowded into Free Derry Corner at this time, close to the Bogside Inn. Not one account talks of a gunman firing from this area. The only hard evidence of firing at all, here, comes from the army themselves. Also, James Porter's tape of police messages has the soldiers firing not at the Bogside Inn, where no bodies or gunmen were ever found, but into these flats where unarmed civilians fell.
That is 17 November. Shots were fired at the army in the walls in the area of the front. Fire was returned and one person was seen to fall.
Yet when James Porter attempted to present his vital tapes to the Widgery inquiry, this is what happened.
The position is that Lord Widgery has examined the transcripts, and because these tapes were illegal interception of radio telephone messages between the general, the brigadier, and his officers, he can't admit.
James Porter remains adamant there's nothing unlawful about taping such messages and passing the information to a legal inquiry, but once more the evidence was suppressed. And perhaps this is the reason why a Home Office memo written by civil servants working on Lord Widgery's staff conspired to pervert the course of the inquiry. A handwritten note read, "Lord Chief Justice will pile up the case against the deceased, but will conclude he cannot find with certainty that any one of 13 was a gunman." In the course of this investigation, we approached the Parachute Regiment, the Royal Anglian Regiment, who were stationed on the walls, and the Ministry of Defence. They all said it was not in their interest to talk. Though the Paras did leave their own message on the day, scratched into a wooden shutter by paratrooper belonging to C Company. Paras were here, and they effing hammered the F out of you, together with 6 coffins and crosses. The regiment confiscated this, but not before James Porter photographed it with 2 witnesses. So why does any of this matter after all this time? The answer is because many say tonight, today, the search for peace is being hindered by the legacy of Bloody Sunday.
If you talk to about the peace process, about democratic politics, to anyone around this area, within a minute or 2 minutes, however you start the conversation, Bloody Sunday will arise and will say to you, how can we trust the establishment, how can we trust the institutions of the state when we remember what was done to us and the lies that were told about it?
Relatives of the dead want, above all else, an official apology for what happened and an independent inquiry.
With the new evidence now, it's time that the British government and anybody that had anything to do with the events around that, they should own up now and give these families a chance to have closure on that part of their lives.
I can never accept Michael's death, never, until justice is done for him and the other 16 people that was murdered with him.
Their arguments underlined by history, the revelation of new evidence led to the release of the Birmingham 6, the Guildford 4. Just yesterday, it led the case of paratrooper Lee Clegg back to the Court of Appeal. It cannot lead the dead back to life, but it could help free their families from the shadow of what took place. Alex Thompson, Channel 4 News, Londonderry.
And as well as the military, we approached several key politicians from the era and the current Northern Ireland Secretary, but all of them declined to be interviewed.